Hello, YouTube world. My name is Tessin Hogebrook. I'm coming to talk to you about a very hard subject. I've spoken to you guys about this before in a previous video in detail, but in I think one aspect only. And this video is going to focus on schizophrenia and relationships. I've seen a lot of videos about people who are schizophrenic and in a relationship, and people who are mentally not affected by schizophrenia, who are the quote-unquote healthy partner in the relationships. And again, I will state that I am a person who is in a relationship with someone with severe paranoid chronic schizophrenia. Well, not severe, chronic. I mean severe paranoid schizophrenia. The mental illness in itself is chronic. Sorry about that. And I am making this video. I don't know how you guys will respond. I don't know how the world will respond, or who will respond, or if there won't be any response at all. I just hope that I provide clarity and just let someone else know that you're not alone, and there's someone else on this earth, this planet, going through it too, day to day, and you can make it. I'll start by saying that the basis of this entire video will really dive into my experiences, my opinions, and just some facts, and how I'm dealing with things as far as my relationship goes. A little background information: my partner is a veteran. He is 35. He has schizophrenia, bipolar. He's bipolar, and he also has post-traumatic stress syndrome. So, I mean, there are a lot of things going on in his mind, and there are a lot of things going on emotionally around him on a 24-hour basis that he himself doesn't always understand, let alone myself. And I just... let me stay in context. There are so many different variables. I believe that you out there who's listening, and whoever's going through this, I know you're thinking, what do I do? Well, where am I going to go? You know, I think the first thing that someone out there is dying to hear about is cheating. It is a reality in any relationship situation, whether it's a guy and a guy, girl and a girl, guy and a girl, you know, no matter what your mental state is, whether you just have bipolar, schizophrenia, post-traumatic stress, any mood disorder, it's definitely a possible issue. Now, are schizophrenics more inclined to cheat? No, not necessarily. No, they're not more inclined to cheat just because they have schizophrenia. However, schizophrenics have a higher, especially men, have a higher sex drive, and they normally do not have a filter or a cap that stops them from doing things that we normally would say, okay, hold on. You know, for instance, we know that having sex without a condom is very, very hazardous to our health. It's very risky and dangerous, and it's something that our conscience will continuously bother us about. If we're about to do something sexual, we'll say, oh, I should put on a condom, or, you know, even when we don't do it, because there are of us who don't practice safe sex sometimes. And with a schizophrenic, those type of things don't even really come into play when they are just reacting to an impulse. And that's what's going on most of the time. Schizophrenics, instead of reasoning, they react to impulse. And that can go in any direction, as far as their anger, their joy, their when they're seeking something out, when they want to accomplish something, if they have a goal, if they just want to express themselves, or if they're responding to internal stimuli, something that's not really there, or if they just really want to, lash out and they can't control their emotions, they're having an episode. There is no filter or cap there, so they just tend to go for it and just do it. And unfortunately, those receptors in the brain are spinning at the speed of light, and that's why when they usually get mad, they just go off the hinge and they go overboard. Or if they're laughing out of context, I know you guys have experienced it. My boyfriend will be sitting there and just laugh out of nowhere, and I'm like, "What are you laughing at?" And he's like, "Nothing." Or they're lying to you and they'll say, "Oh, I was watching something on television and it was funny," or "I was thinking about something," and they weren't thinking about anything. And this can get frustrating. When you first start dealing with it, you're thinking, "Oh, okay, he's laughing, that's kind of cute." And then after a while, he starts to annoy you because you realize that you don't laugh with me anymore, but you rather laugh at something that's not there. And let me tell you, the first thing about it is it's okay to get upset. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to be angry, but not with them. You're a human being. You yourself are flesh and blood. There's nothing wrong with you being frustrated, upset, crying. I've had nights where I had to go get in the car and keep myself from calling old flings and people that wanted to sexually be with me and just like being a super whore. And I mean, I'm not promiscuous. But there's a lot of things that as your loved one's condition can worsen or even improve, you have to remember that it is a debilitating mental illness in a lot of respects. And in a lot of cases, it can be catatonic and the condition, worsens over time. But some people do get better. I will say that everyone's different. Some people's symptoms, the onset of some schizophrenic symptoms don't come all, at once. Sometimes they improve. My partner doesn't like counseling. He just doesn't. He refuses to go. And that is a huge thing that I'm working on right now because he takes his medication. Because I have literally set in place things that you have to work around it. I'm my partner's legal guardian. And so, for the rest of his life, I will have control over everything that he does and, have responsibility for everything that he does. And that's a huge step. And that's another thing that I'll talk about in another video later on, that you might consider having legal guardianship, because that's another role on top of dealing with the emotional aspects of being with your partner, because in that regard you will have the control in case they run away or they get lost, and the mental services come and take them. You'll have the right to come and bring them home, or you have the right to visit them. And that was just an entire episode on itself, because I remember when my partner would get up and just run out of the house and be gone for 5 days, and I would learn eventually that he was going to sleep in shelters, and he was having sex with prostitutes. And this was just something that schizophrenics, especially men, tend to do, because schizophrenics rely on short-term interactions, because their social interactions, because of their illness, never really become developed, because they become scared to interact with people. They don't know how to interact with people, and they're aware that something might not be right. They don't necessarily know what it is, or they might know what it is, and they're just afraid to confront people in a social setting. Schizophrenics usually won't go to clubs. They don't go to parties. They become a recluse, a pariah, and they stay to themselves a lot of the times. And the things that they do engage in are short-term or quick interactions where they don't have to use their cognitive powers to, relay an emotion or convey an expression that will cause their brain to have to focus and, stimulate a continuous communication, because that for them can be a challenge, and also it can trigger emotions that they can't control. And so that's why schizophrenics, people say, do schizophrenics cheat? It's not a matter of them cheating, it's a matter of them having trust issues because they never develop these type of characteristics that we, on a normal everyday setting with I call it not just a mental, a healthy mental state, because everyone can have a mental issue. We just don't have the varying high extent of someone with a diagnosed problem. That is what separates us from the individuals who suffer from these mood disorders and these mental anxieties. And so they don't, it's not a matter of them cheating, even though they can, and it can happen. You have to remember, schizophrenics are still people, and there are some people that cheat and some people that don't. So you might have a schizophrenic that doesn't cheat, but they also can be extremely delusional and think that you're cheating. Or they themselves can still be a person, that cheats, who has schizophrenia. You have to understand your person, and that's a very important part about it too. That's why counseling is very, very crucial. And don't think because your partner is rejecting counseling off the top that it's a lost road and there's no way you can do it. And another thing is, I know I'm going back and forth with so many things, but there's so many layers to it. Being in a relationship with someone with schizophrenia is like an onion. You're continuously crying with each layer you're trying to peel, and after a while you get tired of peeling through the layers. And you have to remember that you're still with a person, and that you have to find out more. You have to know the person, and that sometimes takes time. You have different situations. Sometimes people are in a relationship with someone who is a schizophrenic, but they didn't have the symptoms. So they go from being normal to all of a sudden they have schizophrenia. That's a different situation, in which you notice the person they were before, and that's very, very hard. They were loving, they communicated, they were talking to you, you did things together, they were socially, pushing through. Doesn't mean they didn't have the illness, because it was always there. It just manifested at a certain time. And that's hard to notice them going from, total daylight to total midnight. And that's how I, stated. And then there's some people who date people who have schizophrenia when you met them. And schizophrenics tend to have the amazing ability when they first start dating someone to hide a lot of their symptoms. And there are some of you that may be going through that too, and that's what I experienced. And it's the same as dating someone who didn't have the symptoms at first, and then all of a sudden they have it. Because sometimes schizophrenics learn to hide or taper the symptoms long enough to communicate just enough to kind of get you on a level where you can say, oh, well, I'm interested and I like you. And then after they become comfortable around you, sometimes they, it starts to seep out bit by bit by bit by bit. Because the closer you get to a person, whether they have any mental illness or not, the more of their emotional side you start to see. And that's what happens with schizophrenics who are hiding it, or who have the onset symptoms. They become more comfortable with you. So sometimes when they get mad, they won't control it as good as we normally would with any stranger, but especially with you. A schizophrenic their emotions will normally turn into spears and start to use you as a source of outlet. And though it's not fair, and it's not good, you have to be careful yourself, because I always tell people and friends, especially when I speak to people and when I go to places and speak, the first thing I tell people is, especially in the groups that I speak in, I tell them, you have to take care of yourself first. Because the biggest thing that people in relationships with schizophrenics or care for schizophrenics do is we put them first. Now listen to what I'm about to say, because it's not easy to hear, but it's factual and it's real. You have to put yourself first. If you're religious like myself, you put God first, but in an aspect of relationships, you put yourself first, and after God if you're religious, but you put yourself first in the relationship, because you have to take care of yourself. And that's in any regard. If you put yourself last and think, oh, all the time, oh, he's not kissing me, or she's not kissing me, she's not hugging me, or he's not doing anything, especially sex. Sex is another issue. People who date schizophrenics tend to cheat. You will cheat on your schizophrenic partner. Not saying you will do it, period. I'm saying if you don't get the support and you don't do things for yourself that you're supposed to do, getting a support system, having friends. If you don't have family that are there for you, get a good support system, friends, counseling groups, have an outlet, because being in a relationship with a schizophrenic is almost like having a child, especially as it can get worse. The entire psychosis in itself is literally, as years go by, it does deteriorate. And, it doesn't have to go to the bad extents that, some people say, oh, they're going to be in a home at the end of the time. But that does happen a lot. I know plenty of people who are in relationships with schizophrenics who have been married for years, and they have the same problems that everyone else does, and they've been through everything that everyone else has been through, some more, some less, and they're still together. It's a matter of what you choose to deal with. That's why I said you have to deal with you first. Ask yourself these questions. Do I want this? Is it something I can deal with? Are you a person that no matter what comes, especially if you're married or getting married, one of those vows are in sickness and in health. That means in sickness and mental health too. Till death do you part. You have to remember that, you could end up visiting your husband in a group home because he has become so deteriorated to the point that he cannot make decisions for himself. Or you might become his legal guardian and have to, quit your job and do a part-time job. Or if you're a nurse, you become his home health aide or his home nurse. I'm doing all of that for my partner. And it's very, very hard, and it's extremely challenging. And different states, and there are different states legislations and different things that control and limit what you can do, especially if you're the guardian. But where I live, as a guardian, I mean, any guardianship awards you almost complete power over anything. I mean, if they go open a contract or go get a cell phone and, they open a cell phone contract, you can call Sprint and say, look, I'm his guardian, he didn't have my permission to do that. That contract is null and void. And that's another thing that I'm going to talk about in another video. Power of attorney versus schizophrenia. I'm sorry, power of attorney versus guardianship with people with schizophrenia. And that's another thing I'm going to talk about in another video as well. Because you need to know what you yourself can deal with, and what you in your relationship, what your relationship requires. Sometimes people are in the mental state where they can be there for their partner in their guardianship role, because that's another role. It's a totally different role, and it changes the dynamic of your relationship. And it's hard because as a guardian, I have experienced so many bouts with depression because I have had to disengage myself from the relationship and become the mother for my partner. And a lot of times, even sexually, it's hard to look at someone who you're doing everything for in a sexual manner when you're mothering them. My partner is like 6'2". He's a vet, and he's, of course he's handsome and everything, what have you. And a lot of times lying in bed, I have to hold him like he's a baby. And I'm like, hold on, like, you're supposed to be older than me. I'm used to that. Those dynamics are things that you have to deal with, and those changes come, and they're different with each situation. And of course, over time, he has gotten way better, and I'm trying to really compress like hours and hours of experiences and knowledge into this little video, but there will be other videos. But he has gotten better, and he is getting better. And that's one of the key things you have to remember. You have to know if you can deal with this. Is this something you want? Think about all of it. Write all the things down that you deal with your partner on a day-to-day basis. Write out how many episodes they have, if they're taking their meds, and if they're not taking their meds, getting their medications filled, driving them to the psychiatrist's appointment, driving them to the doctor's appointment, making sure that you have some sort of a system set in place in case they get up and run out. It happens. It depends on the person. or if they have if they go off, if they have an outburst, and another thing, if a schizophrenic person has an outburst, don't take it personally. It has nothing to do with you. They can be shouting in your face, I effing hate you. You're a piece of, shit, and you're this, that, and the third, and they're just cursing you out and getting in your face and getting physical too. That does happen. My partner has never put his hands on me. Oh, but I've had him get in my face and, I'm gonna F you up and da 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 da. And, I have a military background myself, and myself, I was in the street, so that doesn't faze me when it happens. I mean, but at first I used to laugh at him and get angry too, because I used to have a very, very bad temper. But being in this relationship and having this situation has taught me a lot. And it's calming down a bit, because I realized I love this person more than my desire to turn him around and kick out his kneecaps and, fold him like a chair and throw him to the ground, and punch him in his face, which I have the ability to do, and so for me it's different. I don't have that fear because of my background and my history, but it has helped me to cope. But then there are other people who aren't used to having someone they love come in their face and shout at them like that, and it's not them attacking you. When the person with schizophrenia is having an episode and saying these harsh things to you, I mean, stuff that if someone else said to you, you would just leave them. It's not real. It's a chemical imbalance to their brain that has gone to the point that has become so imbalanced to the point at that precise moment and become so acute that they are just without control, delivering uninhibited amounts of emotional overdrive. So it's like they're behind the seat of a car, behind the wheel of a car that's doing 90, and their feet are not on the pedal, and the wheel is just doing like this on its own, and they are glued to the wheel. All they can do is sit there and do like this and wait till the car crashes. That's what it's like being someone with schizophrenia and having an episode. When they're having an episode, they are literally in the car, that body. They're behind the wheel, their feet aren't on the pedal, and the car's doing 90, and it's also doing 360s. And because you're seeing like you're in control, you're looking at the person behind the wheel. Well, what are you acting like that for? But you don't understand, the car is malfunctioning. There's something going on in the internal aspect of that car. The gears are going crazy, and they can't control it. And that's what's going on when someone's having an outburst. They have no control of that car. This is the car, okay? And the brain is the transmission. The transmission is going crazy. And all you're seeing is the car going crazy on you. And you're like, hey, control your car. They can't do it. And this is where the medication comes in. It comes in because it blocks, the receptors and controls the dopamine, and things like that keep things from going into overhaul. But the downside is that those receptors, dopamine, and all those other things that are in the brain that cause the body and the person to react and help them to express emotion. When those things are blocked, the symptoms come down and calm down, and they are calmer. But along with those things, you can't block one part of the brain and just say, okay, but I'm blocking your anger, I'm blocking your outrage, I'm blocking your emotional overdrive, but I still want you to be loving. I still want you to want sex when I want it. I still want you to cater to me when I'm crying. And another thing I get, especially with people when I talk to them, the biggest thing, especially with females, men are like too, but females a lot, but anybody, he laughs at me when I'm sad, and it's the most hurtful thing. I will tell you that any person with a mood disorder, or even people who don't have them, a lot of times people who have, and in my experience in mental health, and again, I'm going to medical school, I'm not yet a doctor, but I've worked in emergency rooms, and I've worked in psychiatric wards as a CNA and emergency room technician for years, so I have the experience, but I'm just speaking from my experience, and also as I study. and my personal experiences with my partner, I can tell you that people who laugh when something is traumatic, horrible, or even extremely painful. I mean, a schizophrenic will sit there and laugh at you while you're crying. And you're thinking, that's it. You're laughing at me, you bastard, I'm done. Laughing is it is a response triggered by their brains because they don't know how to respond else to it. They don't know how to do the the nurturing role, that oh honey, come here. That is not something that's been developed, or because of the medication that part is being blocked. And so a lot of the times laughing is another way of them blocking their response because they don't know how to respond. They laugh because they are trying to, there's something in their mind that they're trying to push out and not project. And the laughter is a way of shielding that. Laughter is a way of shielding the I don't know what to do. When they're laughing, all they're really saying is, uh-oh, I see you're sad, but I don't know what to do. It's really a nervous laugh. But we know a nervous laugh, we can see it. And this is a nervous laugh. But they're doing a happy laugh. It's a nervous laugh. That's what it is. And it's different from laughing out of context, which schizophrenics do a lot too, and what they're doing when they're responding. When they're laughing out of context, like when I said earlier, when I asked my partner, what are you laughing at? And he says, nothing. That's a different laugh. That's laughing out of context. That's a part of the paranoid delusions, and sometimes the hallucinations. Depends on if they're hearing a joke from someone that's not there, or if they're something in their mind is triggering them to understand a concept as humor out of nowhere. And you could be sitting in a silent room reading a book, and they're sitting there, doing like this. Another thing that schizophrenics tend to do, move their lips and they're not saying anything, and also if they're on certain drugs, Haldol, or I can just name the drugs. Haldol is one of the strongest ones, one of the oldest ones, and Abilify, I can go through them. And they have those certain things that they tend to do because the drugs have those effects on them, especially when they have those spasms and they're shaking or they start to dart their tongue out, do things like that. Those are all things that just come with the territory. And in my groups and when I speak to people, I get really into depth and talk with people. Again, I'm not a licensed doctor yet. I'm going to school, but I am someone that I speak from experience, and I speak from my work experience working with people in mental wards and working with those in emergency rooms who have come in and ended up transitioning to a psychiatric ward. So it has been the same over the years. It never changes. Everyone's case, though, is different. So, like I said, know your person, know at core what they're about, and this is where the cheating comes into it. Now, I know I spent like 28 minutes talking about all these things, but it's important. You have to have foundations when it comes to schizophrenia and being in a relationship. You have to know the person. You have to know yourself. Know yourself. Because if you don't know yourself, and you all of a sudden think, I can't deal with this. You spend 3 years with someone or 6 months with someone, and all you've done is make yourself get into a depressed state. And what can happen is, as I was saying earlier, you yourself can end up taking antipsychotics or end up taking mood disorder medication because you become depressed from the situation. And if that's the case, you need to understand and talk to someone. That's why you need to have those support systems in place, because you need to know if you're strong enough to deal with this or if you're able to deal with this. And sometimes, even though you feel like you're not strong enough, you are. It's just another something to do with it, because if it was your brother, you deal with it. If it was your mom, your cousin, or even a close friend you knew for years, you deal with it. You have to decide if, honestly, from your heart, this is something that you're going to take on for the rest of your life, or however long the relationship lasts, or however long the person lasts. I've had people write me letters and say, with very, very heartbreaking stories. And I've had people with great stories and wonderful outcomes, and mine's is in the middle, it's getting better every day, but he has his moments. I've had people write me letters saying, they had to call the mental services and have them come and take their partner out of the home, and they're in a group home now, or some of them, they're in a mental hospital and they've been admitted indefinitely, and and they're going through depression because how do you hold a relationship with someone who's in a mental ward? And you as a human being, you still need to have sex, yes. You still want to be held, you still want to kiss, you still want to go to the movies, you deserve those things. And that's what's hard about explaining to people, especially when I speak to people. They're like, okay, well, you saying I do deserve these things, but why shouldn't I go out and cheat and do them? And that's what this video is really supposed to be about. Cheating and monogamy with someone who's schizophrenic. And so focusing back into that, when you're with someone that has this mental disorder, if you don't have the support group in place, if you don't explore yourself and know yourself and what you want, and you haven't sat down with yourself and decided, or with a counselor and decided, is this something I want? Is this something I'm going to deal with? Is this something that I'm going to cope with? Am I going to stick this through with this person? And if you also haven't decided whether or not you are going to really push and advocate for your partner to have a healthy life where they are, gradually getting better, or where you're going to push for their improvements. And by that I mean making sure that they have in place a psychiatrist, they're taking their meds, and they're also going to counseling. Counseling is very crucial. Schizophrenic's biggest issue is expressing emotion in a healthy way. A schizophrenic can tell you they hate you, no problem. Or they can say, I love you, no problem. They can do that because those are short, quick things that they can say and do. Because schizophrenics always are thinking, at the end of the day, they want to have the shortest interaction possible so that they don't get emotionally overdriven or go over the top. So to prevent themselves from, emotionally getting overboard, they have, or survive off what I call they live off short interactions. That's why a lot of times schizophrenic men especially usually have sex with prostitutes and don't get into relationships, or they don't have a lot of friends, or they usually will try to go into the military, believe it or not, because these are things where they don't really have to have friends. They're told what to do, but sometimes they get put out of the military, and it's another thing that I experience, with people I've spoken to and people I've dealt with. They get said they've gone AWOL, and they get put into the jail, and it's just awful stories. And right now I'm working with some people in the legal system, and trying to set some things in place where we can have advocate for veterans who have been dishonorably discharged, and really just not have been discharged for the wrong reasons. If they're delusional, having hallucinations, and they're not in their informations shouting at the person who's the squad leader, you can't be mad at them, and you can't say they're AWOL and dishonorably discharge them because of that. They have a problem. They should have proper testing in place, along with when they first let you into any type of military service. They should have proper testings mentally in place, and they should have someone that can recognize, hey, something's wrong with this person, something's not right, maybe they shouldn't continue, and may let us honorably discharge them with veteran, ability, full veteran abilities and full veteran, care. And before that, if you're going through the process of going into the services, they should have someone in place to go, well, right now we see something there, and refer them to a mental health specialist. And right now we can't have you come into this branch of the service and not deny them because of their illness, but rather say, because of your illness, we know that this will not be a good choice for you. And that will eliminate so many problems. So that's another thing I'm working on. So, if you are someone who know or have contacts with that, I'm working with some people in the legal system and some experts, and we're trying to get something started with that. So it's a lot of things in the works. And that's for people out there who are going through that. I know what you're going through, and you're not alone. But back into the aspect of cheating. I already told you that schizophrenics don't necessarily cheat just because they're schizophrenic, but usually people who are delusional will accuse you of cheating. I've had it happen. You go somewhere, you're in school, like I was in school, and you come home after school or class, where you been? They know you're at school, but maybe there's a voice there telling them, no, they're cheating. They're cheating. Just like we have a conscience, with ourselves, and we have a sixth sense, and we feel like that. They have six consciences, or like five, or they have instead of a sixth sense, they have 12 senses, or what they think are 12 senses. And these feelings usually are not real. They are things that they are manifest from the condition, and it's very hard to deal with, especially because you, the healthy one, wants to, let's be honest, you want to go out and experience love. You want it from the person. And what happens is you're a human being. And there are those of us who are cheating. Let's just be real. There are those of us who are in relationships with schizophrenic, married, or even in a relationship, dating, and we're cheating. And I'm not saying it's right, but to an extent, you are justified. Let me tell you that so you don't feel like you're going crazy. You are justified by what you're doing, but it doesn't make it right. But it's justifiably understandable. Let me put it that way. It's justifiably understandable. But it's still not good to cheat on someone. It's not right. And for you, instead of saying you're wrong, you shouldn't cheat, and people say this like, you shouldn't cheat on him, he has a problem, they're not in your shoes. They don't know what you go through when you're getting cursed out, when you're not having sex, and you're sitting there begging them for sex, especially people with very, very high self-esteem. Like me, I have a very, very high self-esteem, and I know for myself, I'm not going to sit and beg nobody for sex. And when I first started to really, really deal with the issues that were starting to surface with my partner's schizophrenia and his other three mental disorders, I was like, oh, you kidding me? I'm a very, very nice looking person, I'm talented, I'm funny. There's a cell phone of people who are waiting, and that becomes hard for you. And it's okay to feel that way. But if you make a choice to be with someone, that's why I said you have to know yourself and decide what you want. If you want to be with this person, then you have to do the right steps to help prevent you from going out and seeking that emotional replacement. Because a lot of times what you're going to find out, what I found the hard way, because I went through it too, these people are going to have sex with you and it's going to be like you're single again. You're going to be like, oh, you don't really care about my situation. You don't love me. And then you start looking to the people you're having these little flings with to kind of replace what your partner's not giving you, because eventually your partner starts to become like a kid, someone you're taking care of. And a lot of times you can almost not even feel guilty when you're cheating on your partner, because you're like, I'm not even cheating on a person because they're not there. And I know for a lot of you out there going, oh my goodness, yeah, I know, it happens and it's real. And but there are ways to prevent that, and there are ways to stop that, because let's be real, a lot of us out there are doing it. I had my bout with it, I did, and I stopped. And I decided, I'm not a cheater, but when a human being is put in a situation where they're not receiving anything, you gotta understand, first of all, in a relationship with a schizophrenic person, especially paranoid schizophrenia or any kind of mood disorder, you are not in a normal situation. You're not just with a regular Brian who goes to work every day, does not have emotional outbursts, just a normal guy. You go out to dinner, woo, woo, woo. He's just not giving you sex, and you think he's cheating. And he really isn't, and you're just cheating because you can't communicate with him. You know, someone who can't communicate and doesn't have the cognitive capacity all the time to convey emotion, and probably will not to some extent. And it's hard. And you are not wrong for wanting to seek that out. That is a normal and natural human response when you're not receiving something. If you are hungry, you go and get food. Why? You know that you need nourishment and you have that yearning. Your body is telling you. If you want to go for a walk, your body is saying, okay, you're being stationary too long, I need to stretch, I need blood circulation to increase, I need that hyperemia to flow. Hyperemia is blood flow, increased blood flow. So you go out for a walk, or you go get up and move and do something. That's why people who sit in chairs too long, you just get up and stretch. Your body's saying, get up and move. These are different yearnings, and the same thing happens when you're in a relationship with someone who's not giving you what you need or what you require, whether it be someone without a mental disorder or someone with it. But it's 20 times more intense with someone with a mental disorder, because it's not the fact of them not wanting to and not doing it. It's the fact that they don't even know that aspect is really important or that it even exists. So they're just not even thinking about it. It's not in their realm of thinking. So, and I understand. I remember I had situations where I spoke to my partner and I was crying and he was sitting there laughing, nervous laugh, going, why are you crying? And that is the worst thing you can do. Ladies, and guys too, it's the worst thing you can do is laugh at someone when they're crying. That is the epitome of you don't give a about me and I'm out of here. And you have to take yourself away and come back and go into that room or get in the car and leave. And then sometimes you can't even get in and leave because you're scared that they might react to what you're doing. So you have to almost cut your emotions off half the time. And that drives you crazy. And that's where the depression can set in. And that's where it comes back to knowing yourself and knowing if you can deal with it. Now, before you decide if I can deal with this, you have to go to counseling. You have to go to talk to someone. And see, this is the biggest problem I talk to people about. And when I go to speak in my groups and talk in places to people, I say, the biggest mistake people make in schizophrenic relationships and dealing with people with schizophrenic is pushing them so fast to go to counseling and not taking yourself. A lot of times we have issues internally and mentally that we already have in ourselves, and we think because, oh, I haven't been diagnosed with a problem, I don't have a problem. You do have a problem. Sometimes you're worried about your person cheating and you yourself might be promiscuous. And the fact that, yeah, you cheated on your partner because they're not giving you what you want, and we already talked about that, but you've been promiscuous in your previous relationships. You never looked at that. Or you're thinking, well, I'm with him and I wasn't going to cheat. You have to deal with your own issues first. That's why I say deal with you first. Make sure you are mentally healthy and ready and equipped. Have a counselor or go to a spiritual advisor. Now be careful with spiritual advisors because religion can be very funny. You need to go to a spiritual advisor who is very neutral. And by neutral, I mean, if you're a Christian, and you have a regard for the word, and you know that your spiritual leader, pastor, reverend, your vicar, we call them in UK, we call them vicars, a priest, what have you, is going to be someone who, yes, they're going to offer you that spiritual aspect that you're used to and that you can coincide with and that works with your life. That's fine, but they also need to be able to take themselves away from that spiritual aspect. And people usually who are trained in divinity have to have training in sociology and psychology, because 1/3 of divinity is psychology, because you are really dealing with the mind and the perception of the supernatural, or dealing with your belief in something that is of a greater material value spiritually or mentally. And so, psychology is a very big part of it, because depression and all that is dealt with in spiritual leaders' places. So they should have that real literal side to them. I don't care if it's Pastor Green, who's been preaching for years and he makes the church go crazy and he does sermons, this and that. If Pastor Green sits with you and goes, well, this is a person that you just need to pray for, and he must have sinned or done something wrong, and God is telling me this about you, that, and the third. You talk to God first. Again, it all deals with you, because I am a spiritual person, and I believe that you talk to God first, and you ask God what to do, and He'll lead you in that way. That's my spiritual side, and everyone else is not spiritual. But back to the points, go to someone who you can trust, who you know is going to give you that guidance, who you know is going to be literal, and who knows you. And even if it's someone that doesn't know you, look up their credentials, find out. A lot of spiritual leaders do have degrees in psychology. A lot, they're all supposed to, have gone to the school of divinity, or be ordained, and that incurs some side of psychological background or training. So, look into that. And like I said, have that person there, whether it's a spiritual leader, a counselor, or your own psychiatrist. You need support. You need it, need it, need it. I can't stress it much. If you don't have support, you will cheat on your partner. That's one. You will, at some point, if you're like I was, if you have tempers, some of us out there who got tempers, you'll lash back, which is a big no-no. You don't want to lash at someone who's having an outburst, especially someone who's a veteran, 6'2", and you both know how to fight. That's going to be the most disgusting thing in the world. A person who's delusional, and having a schizophrenic outburst, there's no winning the argument. Even if you happen to magically overpower them or cause them to be quiet, all you've caused them to do is go to that corner or to the side or run out, and they're incubating that anger, and it's going to remanifest itself into an argument with someone they don't know. They're probably going to argue with a drug dealer in the street who doesn't know them and get shot and killed, or they're going to run down to the a police station and start acting out, or they're going to go out and hurt somebody who is a random bypasser, and it's just not worth it. So, those are things you want to avoid, and that comes from having that support system in place for yourself. Know yourself. By knowing yourself, you really need to have that support system there so you can help to rectify things within yourself that you need to work on first, or sometimes during, because you don't get to do everything like that. You might not have that time to get yourself together. You might already be in a relationship. It's okay to go to a counselor and say, look, I have trust issues. I have monogamy issues, and I want to talk and work these things out. You can do it. I've had certain issues, that I've had to talk with a counselor about. I've had anger issues, and things like that I've had to work out with a counselor. And, I'm so happy to say I've never raised my hand to my partner or, threatened to hit him. I mean, the anger was there, and I have the ability to, snap him in half. I mean, he's big, but I mean, I have that street, and I have that, I'm a fighter, but I've been very blessed to have people around me and being able to experience and work in this field long enough to see that that's not the answer. And if you love someone, why would you want to hurt them, especially when they're doing things that they don't understand they're doing? Because I can tell you, a schizophrenic person will tell you they hate your guts and literally try to kill you or say that they are going to kill you. And then 5 minutes later, or maybe a half hour once they calm down, they're looking at you like, oh, do you wanna watch a movie? I love you. And you're like, you're thinking, are you crazy? And it comes with the territory. So know yourself. Have the person to support you in place, that counselor, that spiritual leader, those support groups. Support groups are big, and that's what I deal in as well. And when I start my practice, I'm going to really focus on that, because there's so many people suffering out there with mental illnesses, and it's not just the person with the illness, it's the people dealing with it. And I tell you that a lot of the new mood disorders and a lot of depressions don't stem from people with mental illnesses. It stems from their loved ones who support them. Yes. It's the ones who are driving them to their appointments, or the one who lives with them, or the woman who's cheating on her husband every day, or has gone from just talking to a guy at work to a full-on affair because their husband at home is no longer the man that they married. And I can tell you that person still is in there, but you have to go through the proper steps, and you have to be willing to fight for it. In any situation, and especially in this one, you have to go and have that support system, and you also have to make decisions sometimes. Sometimes I remember the hardest decisions I made was admitting my partner to a psychiatric ward. It had to be done, because I mean, I'm not going to sit here and cry and, moan and, wait for you to calm down all the time. No, this is when he wasn't taking his medication. If your partner is refusing to take medication, that is a no-no. No, it's not going to get better without medication. And I know some people are thinking, well, God can heal you. God creates people. God gives people brains. God puts the knowledge in people's brains. The knowledge that God gives people is the knowledge to extract, create, and administer medications. So if you want to go religious with it, I will tell you, if you're saying now using medications, I'm trusting God to heal them. Yes, I believe in that too, God healing people and people getting better. But, I mean, not even but, also, a part of God healing someone in his plan is them doing what they're supposed to do. You have to want it. Don't make excuses for your partner if they're schizophrenic. They have to want to get help. And if they don't want to get help, that's where in another video I'll talk about power of attorney and guardianship, because there are limitations and then there are things that really help you when you are the guardian. You can say, no, take him, hold him, give him treatment. I want him to have counseling. I want him to, have therapy in a controlled environment, because sometimes you might need that before you snap and go crazy. Because what's it going to do any good? Your partner's over there talking to himself or cursing you out, and you're sitting there about to take a whole bottle of Tylenol and Valium and Xanax, in your life. It's not worth it. You have to take proper steps. That's why knowing yourself is important. And I advise people on what to do when I'm talking to them. I don't advise people. I give them my opinion, and I share with them what I have done. And I do have doctors come in who can advise, and people take my advice as far as my experience. They take advice from my experiences, because there are some people who can advise you and I've dealt with doctors who have never had a schizophrenic partner. And talking to schizophrenics and having them as patients is very different from having them as a partner. And if you never experienced that, that is a understanding and a knowledge that I don't think anybody with any amount of training can ever give. And that's why I have my groups, and that's why I also bring in licensed, specialists and doctors to come in and do that. And it's very important for me to stress to people, I'm sharing my experiences, my opinions, and, giving what I hope will help you, and I'm not advising at all, because I'm not licensed yet. And I have seen dramatic turnarounds with people, and it's been amazing, but it takes, first of all, you knowing yourself, having the support group, and then moving on from that. And in the aspect of cheating, like I was saying, you can stop the cheating. You have to, and it's not healthy, because what you're going to keep doing is going to these people for these short-term interactions, because you're doing the same thing your partner's doing. That's another thing that's funny. I tell people a lot of times when you hang with anybody, or if you're in a relationship with someone, and if you look at it spiritually, you say you start to take their spirit, or if you look at it literally on a mental and a scientific way, people mimic the same things. If you hang with someone who's schizophrenic, not to say you're going to start talking to yourself and be delusional, but you will start, if they're not being treated and you're not having the support system, you will start to have mental anguish. You will start to exhibit bouts with depression. You will, I'm not saying you'll hear voices or anything like that, but you will start to mentally have issues. You will start to detach, and you will start to find yourself frustrated, and it can lead to mood disorders. And I'm speaking from experience. It happens because you yourself are taking on your partner's, your brother's, your aunt's, your uncle's, your mother's situation to yourself. And because you aren't trained to deal with it, or you don't even know what you're dealing with, and you don't have that support system, your brain is going, okay, there's nothing to reflect on, so you start to reflect that back to yourself, and that is self-destructive. So like I said, key point, have the counselor, spiritual leader, psychiatrist, friends there. You need to have a life. You do. It is not a sin. It's not wrong. You are not neglecting your partner if you go with your friends out to the movies and get away from it. Have that one person you trust and someone you can just say, you know, yeah, he did have a flare-up today. This is what happened. Or a psychiatrist you can tell this to, or a counselor you can tell this to. Have someone you can talk to, because I'm telling you, it will well up. And you'll either A, start taking mood disorder medication, because you yourself will develop one, or you will start to, or can, I'll say can, start to become frustrated and you'll lash back at a person who has the outburst, which is a big no-no, or you will end up breaking the relationship off. And it might be something you could have, you know, worked through and something that could have worked out. And I'm not advocating for people to stay in something they don't want to do, because some people, that's why I said you have to know yourself. Because for some people, they think about that after I talk to them and share with them my experiences. They go, you know what, thank you. I really realized I can't deal with this. And I'm going to make sure I refer them to, you know, some mental health services, and I'm going to tell their friends and family, you know, that the relationship is over, and you know, I'm going to find a counselor to help me convey this to them or whatnot. And because I always give it, you know, I always tell them how I have done things in the past, you know, again, not advising, but giving them my experience and my opinions. I tell them what I've done, and they make informed choices. And then I've had some people's, you know, partners who were the schizophrenic one that they had to break away from come to me and say, you know, I want to get back with this person. I know that they were going to your groups. I know that they were talking to the doctor that you had there. Is there something I can do? I mean, these are people who with the mental illness. Because you forget, people with schizophrenia are still human. There's that guy you met at the library, or that guy who was okay a couple of years ago and didn't have these problems. He's still in there. He's just all of a sudden behind a car whose transmission is all of a sudden jacked up and it can't control it anymore. Okay, and the medications are, and the counseling, they are those mechanics that come in there and start working and retinkering, and medication does not stop everything. There will always be an outburst or something like that, but it might not be as severe. They might not go to the point that they do. And with the cheating and the you know, infidelity, you know, there are schizophrenics that cheat because they are cheaters. Okay, let me tell you that. It's not because of their mental conditions, it's because they are cheaters. Because, again, they are still people. They just might be a person that cheats that has schizophrenia. And then there are people who, because of their schizophrenia, don't have that filter there to say, okay, this is an impulse. That girl over there is cute in that skirt, but I have Amanda at home and we're together in a relationship, like we would think. But even people who don't have the mental things, we still go and mess with that girl and do what we're not supposed to do. It's just that people with schizophrenia usually don't normally have, again, that filter and those receptors and that dopamine, all that stuff is going, you know, so it just, they're like, oh, I want sex, I'm going to go do it. It doesn't mean they don't love you anymore or love you any less. It doesn't mean they don't want to be with you. It doesn't even mean they don't want to be faithful. It's just that there's nothing blocking that urge. It's just like, again, like I told you, you're hungry, you go eat. For them, it's as simple as going to go get a burger when you're hungry. Oh, it had to be done. I mean, I had my partner tell me, and I was crying on the couch, thinking like, I'm going to cave your face in, you know. He told me when he came back in after he had cheated on me, yeah, I just cheated on you. It was good. It was good. But I don't want to talk about it. I just want to take a shower and let's go eat something. Could you imagine what my response I had? And we have these big chairs in our living room. I had to put it down. You know, you want to break it on their face, and you can't do that. I went in the room and cried, and I had to pray, I had to meditate, I had to keep clearing my mind, and I had to. Another thing too is, Especially with women, what do you want to do? You want to talk. Schizophrenics, that can cause them to have an outburst. Because why? It can irritate them. Because they're like, they don't want to talk about it. They don't see the point. Because they don't think what they've done is necessarily wrong. Or they don't understand why you're so upset. Because again, their perception of reality is distorted. So, having sex with somebody else or cheating, first of all, and schizophrenics can be very dishonest. Not saying they're liars, but they lie a lot. They can lie a lot. Or they cannot tell you stuff a lot. You might be thinking they're cheating. They will not tell you a lot of the times. You know, they just might not. But schizophrenics aren't necessarily liars. Usually they're very honest people. They just don't tell you. Okay? And we know that's the same as being dishonest. But if you say, Tessin, did you break that? Did you break the remote? And I say, no, I didn't break the remote. And I did break the remote. That's a lie. If you say, Tessin, did you break the remote? And I go, why are you asking me about the remote? Even though I broke it, I'm not saying I didn't break it. That's what schizophrenics tend to do. They will not answer the question, or they will get upset and frustrated. And usually this conveys to us, you did do something, you know. But usually they just don't know how to communicate, yeah, I did it, or no, I didn't do it. Or sometimes schizophrenics will just tell you the truth, and that will hurt. And they'll have no emotion. That's one of the worst things they can do. I cheated. Oh, they won't say I cheated. Say, I had sex today. When you're like, what? And they can do that. Not everyone does do that. It's just they're different. Everyone's different, and I have so many questions. People email me so much, and especially when I'm speaking to people, I get so many questions that I have to say, like, you please write your questions down, and I will call you back or email you, before the next group, before the next session, and we'll address them privately, because cheating, being accused of cheating, is such a huge thing when you're dealing with someone with schizophrenia, and you just have to know whether you're going to be able to deal with it, and the proper and the healthy way to go about preventing these things from happening. Communication is huge. That's why they have to go. It's important for someone with schizophrenia or any type of mood disorder to have counseling, because in any relationship, if you're going to communicate, it's not going to last. So imagine somebody who doesn't know how to, or doesn't even really think it's important. And you find yourself, besides that, imagine being the guardian of someone, and you find yourself doing everyday things with them that should be normal and second nature to you. My partner's in their 30s. I'm in my early 20s. And there are things that they should, normally a person their age should have learned a long time ago, that I'm having to deal with. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because I'm very mature for my age. But with that, I don't want to deal with certain things, but you can't look at it like that. That's why you have to know yourself. It goes back to knowing yourself and knowing you're ready, having the support system in place. So I will tell you, if you're cheating on your partner with schizophrenia, stop. And I'm not saying stop because it's wrong, because it's not right, but stop for yourself. You're destroying and destructing yourself. You're doing it because you're not receiving something at home. Or there are those out there who are just cheaters and haven't dealt with it. There's two sides to it. But for those who do have a problem, keeping faithful, and then there's some of those who were cheaters, and it just so happens in this relationship you were trying to do right, and now this has forced you to revert. Whatever the case, stop for yourself. If you're a cheater and you're cheating, stop for yourself. If you're not cheating, if you're not a cheater, and this situation has forced you to go out and seek it, stop for yourself, because you're going to hurt yourself continuously. These people you're having these flings with, honey, are not going to do anything for you. They're going to give you that quick thrill, and you're going to come home and look at that person you love in bed, who's probably talking to themselves, or they're going to be reaching out, smiling to you, not even knowing what you did, and you're going to feel so guilty, and it's going to burn a hole in you. And then it's a perpetuating cycle, because what happens is, usually, 9 times out of 10 when I talk to people who say they're cheating on their person with schizophrenia or any disorder, they say, well, we were having sex like crazy. And then all of a sudden when they started taking the pill, you know, or when they started to have the symptoms, all of a sudden they became detached. And then I get some people go, well, I know it's not the pills because they still watch porn a lot. Then you got a lot of times people who you experience your partner, they take their pills and they rather watch porn and jerk off. Again, schizophrenics, they thrive off of short-term interactions. Prostitutes, people they don't have to worry about pleasing, so they can just sexually get it over with. Okay, having sex with someone you're in love with is an emotional outpouring. It's draining, but it's draining in a good way. But people with schizophrenia and mood disorders and mentally ill, they see that work and they're like, I have to hold you and kiss you and stuff, and I don't really want to do all that because I might do it wrong. It's a fear of them not being able to. Schizophrenics usually have a fear sexually of not being able to please their partner. And also not being able to as well express emotion. They have a fear of not being able to express themselves emotionally and please their partner. As well, when the drugs start to take a hold, especially with men, they have problems with performance issues. Very important. It isn't you. It's not you. Usually schizophrenics are very honest because you start wondering, well, do you want me? Do you want to be with me? And what do we ask our schizophrenics? What I used to ask, I used to go, is it the medication? You find yourself asking that. Is it the medication? And after a while, your human being starts to get old. You're like, it's not the medication, it's you. That's the frustration. And that's why you have to go to groups and talk to people who've been through it, because when you have someone else there, you go, oh, okay, so it's not just me. And they'll tell you, my husband does the same thing. You ask yourself, is it the medication? And they'll say, yeah. It's the easiest answer. And sometimes it might not be the medication. It might be the fact that they have a problem being nervous. And then you're thinking sometimes, well, he used to have sex with me like crazy. So he didn't have a problem pleasing me at one point. Well, that's because when you first started having sex, he didn't really know you that, that intimacy, that knowing you wasn't that deep. But as he got to know you or she got to know you, it became more of a, okay, now I'm invested in this in person. I don't know how to express those emotional things. Because as you emotionally get deep with a person, sex changes. It becomes more emotional, and it becomes more of a mentally involved state. That's what's happening with someone with schizophrenia. They are understanding that, okay, I'm having these emotions now. Now, okay, I can't just have sex with her or him and have these great sexual, interactions. Now these emotions I don't know how to express. I need to revert. I need to go back to the way it once was. Because you can't now, because the person with schizophrenia is thinking, I can't go back to just having sex with her and then I'll see her next week, or I'll see her next time we go on another date, or, we'll just have sex later. Now they can't deal with that emotional aspect, so they would start to cheat sometimes, or they might watch porn. I have a lot of people saying, my husband, schizophrenic, he's watching porn, he don't have sex with me no more. It's not that. It goes back to that short interaction. He knows that the lady on the screen, all he gotta do is press play, and he can take care of himself. He knows that she's not going to want to be held. He's not going to have to put something forth that he's not sure how to do it. He's not going to worry about whether or not he can, because he's on medication, if he gets soft, he can always come back and try to pleasure himself again later just by pressing play. She's not really there. And that's a comfort for them. And so that's usually what's happening with people who are saying, my partner's choosing porn over me, with schizophrenics. I'm not talking about people who don't have the disorder. Or even people with any kind of mood disorder. And sometimes people without it too, yes. And then you have people who have porn addictions. People who have schizophrenia are still people, and they can have a porn addiction. But 9 times out of 10, it's not really a porn addiction. I'm telling you, it reverts back to the point that they thrive off that quick interaction. And, if they weren't having sex with prostitutes, then the porn was a quick fix. Because, again, they don't have to invest in an emotional aspect. And because you're thinking, well, you used to have sex with me before, and you had your schizophrenia, so you have to be cheating on me, or you must not want me anymore. No, when they first started having sex with you, think about it, it was at the beginning when y'all were having sex. The emotions weren't as deep. So they didn't have to worry about investing nothing into it. Because when you first start having sex with someone, your main goals are pleasing yourself. You're not thinking you're my boyfriend, you're my girl, but as time goes by, you start caring about the person. And they are people, and they start thinking, am I pleasing you? That causes them to revert. And then they go ahead online to soandso.com where they don't have to invest in that. And then by the time you come home from work, or you're in the mood, that fear has been set there. That's why counseling has to come into place. That's why you have to communicate with them. I dealt with so many different issues. I mean, I even used to not punish my mate, but I would, say, well, you know what, you don't want to mess with me. You're probably cheating, and you just go sleep on the couch. I'm gonna sleep in my bed because I'm not gonna do this. It's not right. And that wasn't healthy because you're punishing them for something that they don't think is, they don't know what's going on. In their minds they're thinking, well, I'm watching porn, I'm not cheating. Or sometimes they're thinking, well, I'm having sex with this other person because I don't know how to please you. And to us, we know that's not healthy, and that doesn't make any excuse. But you're not dealing with a person who mentally has the capacity to totally hold everything against a civil conscience. They are reacting on impulse, and they're also reacting to their mental illness. So please ask me any questions you want. I mean, I will answer them as honestly, as truthfully, and as quickly as possible. And please, email me. I think my email is up there. eaetess@aol.com. And I will be happy to answer your questions. Again, that's E for Eskimo, A for Apple, E for Eskimo, T for Tom, E for Eskimo, S for sugar at AOL.com, eaetess at AOL.com. Email me or just leave me a message here. I will answer it. And I mean, I wish you guys all the best. Keep loving each other. Keep loving your partner. They do love you, because I'm telling you another thing about schizophrenics. They can be blatantly honest. They will just leave if they don't want to be there. That's one of the beauties of dealing with someone with schizophrenia. I mean, they can be blunt, very blunt. And then sometimes they can just say things that aren't true. But usually they will not be with you if they don't want to be. I think my next video will focus on guardianship as opposed to power of attorney. Again, my experiences, I've been through the full gamut of everything. And it will focus on those aspects when dealing with someone who has any type of mental illness, from what you might want to look at as far as what you feel you are determining factors for you to even consider filing for it. And I will just be speaking from my experience, okay? And yeah, please, but in the interim, please, email me, ask me questions. And I'm more than happy to answer them. The person you are with, if you're cheating, stop for you. If they are cheating, or if they are, it is cheating or acting on impulses or watching that porn, or, they're just sexually cut off, it is not you. It might be the medication. It might be mentally the psychosis itself that's causing them to revert. You're not undesirable. You're still beautiful. They still want you. You still got it. It's not you. And there are other people, I'm one of them, that go through it daily. I still go through things daily. It's gotten better. But I had to pioneer some things for myself. And I'm more than happy to share my experiences and what I've done with anyone who has a question. You're not alone. Love you all. And let me know if I can be of help. Alright. Take care, guys. God bless you.